Hi.
Today we're going to start a new project. It's going to be kind of a writing and research project, and I know that sounds boring, but this one's going to be fun. It's called a QUiP exercise. QUiP just means questions into paragraphs.
Okay.
So it's going to walk you through the whole process of doing a research paper. It's going to be kind of informal. All we're going to do is come up with a subject that you're interested in. We're going to ask some questions about that subject, and then we're going to turn that into a research paper.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is give you this handout, and it looks a lot like one I've already filled out. I chose an artist by the name of Constantine Brancusi. He was a sculptor I'm interested in myself. Who's an artist that you're interested in?
Vincent van Gogh.
Excellent. So why don't you write that under the topic part of your paper?
Okay.
Perfect. Now, I already knew some things about Brancusi before I started my research. I knew he was a sculptor. I knew he actually lived around the same time as Vincent van Gogh. But I didn't know where he came from or where he was born. So my first question was, what is Brancusi's background? I wanted to know where he was from.
Okay.
So what's a question that you have about Vincent van Gogh?
Maybe who were his major influences?
It's a good question. That tells you a lot about an artist. So in the first box where I wrote, what is Brancusi's background, you can write, who were his major influences?
Okay.
Perfect. What are some other questions that you have?
What style of art did he do?
Oh, I see. You know, like, was he a modernist or an impressionist or what? Yeah, that's a good question. And what's a third one?
What were his major religious beliefs?
That's a good question too. Why don't you go ahead and write that down in the box on the third line.
Okay.
All right, you got all your questions down. That's excellent. The next thing we're going to do, since we have these questions that we're already thinking about for the artist, are we're going to research some answers for those. So, like for instance, I found two sources that I thought were credible. One was the Encyclopedia Britannica that talked about my artist, and the other one was the artiststory.com, which is a website that talks about biographies of artists. So I found some information about Brancusi's background. He was born in Romania, for instance, and I put that in my first box under the source one. For your source one, you can find a website that talks about Van Gogh, and you can answer your questions in each one of those boxes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's find you some good sources online. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. Great. Looks like you found a couple of sources and you answered all your questions already. What were the two sources you found?
Biography.com. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And Van Gogh Gallery.com.
Bless you. Those are good sources. Those are credible sources. I know of biography.com because I've used it, and Van Gogh Gallery, I'm sure, is a website dedicated to Vincent van Gogh. So what kind of answers did you find to your first question on biography.com? You asked who were his major influences. What were some of those names you found?
London artists, Charles
Bargue.
Bargue, Henry de Toulouse,
Toulouse-Lautrec.
yeah,
Yeah.
Paul Gauguin.
Gauguin. That's
Gauguin.
right. Yeah. Those are all French names, so they're a little hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
But that tells you something. If I just said they were all French names, right?
Uh-huh.
So his major influences were what?
French artists.
How interesting, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's a good thing that you can take from that answer. How about we'll skip the second question. We'll go on down to what were his religious beliefs. So on VanGoghGallery.com, what did it tell you?
He was the son of a pastor, and he believed he would preach the gospel, but discovered his calling was actually to be an artist.
Wow, so that's interesting. I didn't even know that going into this. So he actually had a Christian background. Huh?
Yes.
I bet that influenced his painting some. So we'll change all of this information now into an outline form. And I've got a handout for that too. I'm going to use the sample that I did on Brancusi. So what we're going to do is an outline that's going to have a thesis statement at the top. We'll wait to fill that part out though, okay?
Okay.
And then we're going to change each one of our questions and the information we got from those questions into headings for the outline so that we can start organizing our paper.
Okay.
So we've talked about outlines before, but the first thing you'll do with an outline is start with a piece of notebook paper. You'll just write a 1 for your first heading. And you can put that right there at the top of the page. Perfect.
Okay.
So we had that question, what were his major influences? But we want to change that into a statement now. And we've learned some things. Remember, those names were hard to pronounce. So what type of artists were his major influences?
French.
Very good. So how did you turn that into a statement?
His major influences were French artists.
Perfect. That's a great job. And I'll let you go through each of the next 2 headings. Just leave some space for some supporting information underneath each heading. And we'll turn each one of those questions into a statement as well, okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. Looks like you finished the first one. So for your second heading, you'll put a 2. Yeah, just like that. And you'll want to put your second question into a statement. So what kind of statement would you come out with on that one?
Van Gogh was a post-impressionist artist.
Perfect, that's right. So just go ahead and write that as the heading there, and then underneath that we'll write some supporting information. Great, it looks like you finished up all 3 of your headings and the supporting information. Got some information on that last line about him growing up Methodist and wanting to be a preacher, but he ended up being an artist. So out of all the stuff you've learned, what would you sum up to be Van Gogh? Like the 3 main points, just sum them all up to say a statement about Van Gogh.
Okay. Vincent van Gogh was a devout Christian who, through the influence of French artists, became a post-impressionist artist himself.
That's a very good summary of everything that you've covered by answering those 3 questions, huh? So that we'll use as your thesis statement, and we'll put that up at the top there.
Okay.
Okay, great. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take that thesis statement and make it our introduction to a paper that we write. And then you can take each one of those headings, turn them into sentences, and have supporting sentences underneath each one of them.
Okay.
And from that, we'll write an entire paper. So that really, step by step, makes it a lot easier to write your whole paper, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll let you get started on that. Just start with that thesis as your introduction, and I'll help you go through the rest of the paper.
Okay.
Excellent. So you've written your paper now, too. That's great. So we started off with that thesis statement. Just like you said, Vincent van Gogh was a devout Christian who, through the influence of French artists, became a post-impressionist painter himself.
Yes.
Great. And you talked about all of the main points that we covered with your questions, right?
Yes.
So what did you learn in this process? How were we able to change the questions into something from the very beginning to now?
Well, I learned from making the outline, I could change the questions into statements with my my answers to my questions to build my
Your supporting evidence.
yeah.
That's excellent. So you learned a lot about Vincent van Gogh through that process, huh?
Yes.
How great. So anytime you want to learn about another artist, you can go into the same sort of process.
Right.
Anything you want to do. If you've got another class, maybe you have to learn about a famous general. You could do the same thing with him, huh?
Uh-huh.
That's very good. Great job.
Thank you.